This is Outdated, and welcome to the first ever episode of Free For All. So this series, Free For All, is going to be a series of reviews of games, but these game reviews are only for games that are free. Only for games that are free. So if you have to spend money to actually purchase the game and install it, then this will not be on this channel. It's only things available to play without spending a penny. Now, that doesn't include microtransactions and things like that. I mean just like a cover price to purchase it. Example, Overwatch, not free to play. You had to buy the game. Originally a $60 game for that matter. On the other hand, say Paladins, free to play. So using those as examples. So, today's episode, I'm going to be reviewing the recent console release of Dauntless. I've actually been looking forward to this one, looking forward to playing it. I enjoyed my time with it, and I'm going to get into the review here in just a second. But, there's a lot of footage here we're going to go through, and as you watch me try to whack the tail off this stupid thing, I'm going to go ahead and let you know how my rating system is going to work. So I'm going to judge games on 5 categories. The first one is presentation. Presentation will include graphics and sound. So the audio-visual portion of the game, that's where it's going to come from. Oh, ouch, that hurt. So I'm going to give it a score between 0 and 5, with 0.5s being possible. So a game can get a 0, a 0.5, a 1, a 1.5, a 2, all the way up to 4.5 or 5 in the case of something I think is perfect for what it does. These are, of course, just my opinions, and I'll explain why I have my opinion, and I reserve the right to change that opinion in a future video, or for you to tell me why I should change that opinion. I think that would be great. I would love to hear from people, and I may rethink some of these. Matter of fact, my final score on this one, since this is my first one, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, but after looking at the categories, that's kind of where I stand. And so I would love to hear some feedback to determine, how do I define this, and how do I redefine it? So, and we just cut his tail off. That'll teach you. All right, so that's category 1, is a visual presentation. So let's start with the graphics. We're going to talk about it now. So you've got 2 different schools of graphics. You have the photorealism versus artistic expression. So photorealism would be a game like Gears of War or Call of Duty, a game that they're trying to make the characters and the world in the background look like real characters, real people, the real world. A tree looks like a tree, not a cartoon tree, that sort of thing. That's what photorealism is attempting. And that you have to judge those on kind of different categories depending on the game type. I will say this game definitely is not photorealistic. It is going more for an artistic expression. I always think of an artistic expression style game, for the most part, at least in today's age, as being more like a Pixar movie. Like Finding Nemo or Finding Dory or, any movie they've made. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out that that's the best way to describe it. Sometimes that art style is absolutely perfect for what they're making. Well, I just walked right into that one, didn't I? Sometimes, on the other hand, it isn't, and they could, do more. This being a free-to-play game, you would assume, photorealism would be kind of difficult to pull off. But that being said, this game goes for an artistic expression style. This game similar to it, but is more photorealistic, would be definitely Monster Hunter, if you want to go down that road, especially Monster Hunter World. So I think the color in the game is very good. I don't think it has the brightest color palette, but it has a bright color palette which fits its artistic style. I think that the visual effects are pretty good. These energy geysers thing, the little aura around me right now, they're not great, but they're definitely good. They serve the purpose. They do what it's trying to do. And that works out perfectly. It's trying to indicate buffs I may have or places I can go to get certain things. Yeah, all of that is just fantastic. Like that little heal effect is pretty sweet. I like that. All that is fantastic. As far as sound go, the audio is good. The audio is crisp. He just died, and by that I mean the lesser Embermane I just killed with my peeps here. It's good, it's crisp, I think the sound is pretty good. Now, I do think like the sound of weapon attacks, like sword slashes and stuff, they are not what I mean, they're not very good. They don't sound like what you would expect. You know, you would want a sound that sounds like metal on flesh, and that doesn't. But if they're going the route of artistic expression, in the world of a cartoon, that is kind of how weapons would sound. And so I can give them some credit there. There is one complaint I have as far as presentation, and it's specifically audio, and you're about to see an example of it. So let me let you see this, and then I'll explain why I'm not a fan.
Good timing, Slayer. If you have some time, may your skies be clear. Welcome, Slayer. Action. That's what's called for.
Okay, you're not really seeing it in this one, but I'll show you in a minute. But a good example of what I'm looking at here is NPC dialogue. There's not a lot of spoken dialogue. It's mostly just canned things like hello and goodbye kind of stuff, just, you know, done differently. See, like, it's time we talk, Slayer. Let's see how much he actually talks and how much I read.
Hey there.
There's the hello.
Let's get slaying.
There's the I just gave you some information that you're reading yourself. More information you're reading yourself. As you can see, this kind of drags down the pace of the game because I was actually reading it at the time. Here's more read it yourself. Notice she didn't say in squat. I mean, she could say like maybe the first sentence of each one of these. And then she says the goodbye thing. That's where my issue is a lack of NPC voice acting. Now, I know that is not the cheapest thing in the world to produce. That being said, there have been video games that had people that made it do some of the voice acting, and they kept it in. I mean, they're not the greatest actors in the world, but, you know, just remotely decent voice acting is better than no voice acting at all. But that being said, that would be my complaint if I have one on that regard. As far as presentation, I usually am going to look at photorealism as being preferable to artistic expression unless the game itself lends itself to that need for artistic expression. I don't think this game does. I think it's a cost-cutting measure in many ways. But what I will say is they made the world feel like it all belonged, and that is a big deal. It doesn't feel like a real world and then everybody's a cartoon.
How goes the sleigh?
The subject matter is kind of cartoony, and the actual world is kind of cartoony, and I think that's great. All right, so in the end, at a score of 0 to 5 for presentation, I am giving Dauntless a 4.5 out of 5. So that's a 4.5 out of 5. So next, we're going to move on to my second category. My second category is performance. So how well does it run? What's the frame rate like? And I'm not like running anything to show its frame rate. I'm just gonna like say, is there any like skipping, lag, that sort of thing? Because some games, I'll be honest with you, your average person can't tell 30 frames per second from 60. Notice I said your average person. But there are some games that you can definitely tell depending on how fast-paced the action is. First-person shooters, as an example, or some third-person shooters, that frame rate you can definitely tell. Another great example is a game like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and those sorts of things. You can definitely tell the frame rate. I mean, like, it becomes very obvious. Once you hit 30, the ability to tell between 30 and, say, 40 and 40 and 50, it becomes a little harder. But for first-person shooters and for games that require pixel-perfect control, that frame rate becomes very important. In this game, I don't think the frame rate is as big of a deal because everything is a little more slow and plodding by design. Let's see if I can jump over there just for poops and giggles. Here we go. Bonsai! Yes! And I got whatever this is that I've been looking for. Okay. So, I believe this game plays smoothly, especially for what it is. It's online all the time. You saw me a minute ago playing on a hunt with other players that were randoms. That went really well, by the way, that hunt. I mean, there were no issues with my fellow players. There were no issues as far as, like, frame drops or screen tear that I noticed. And if they were minor enough I didn't notice. I was wrapped up in the action of the game, which we'll get to in a minute. So I would say it runs smoothly. There were, and I didn't catch a whole lot of this on the video or any, I don't think. There were the occasional connection issues, to be fair, but most online games have those, and I can't guarantee if that isn't my completely crappy internet service or if it was actually a problem with them, because most of the time it ran extremely well. Oh, yay, a swamp. Nice. Or it's sewage. Okay, I just jumped out and went to a different clip here. So, I think that there were some connection issues, but again, I can't necessarily blame that on the game. The controls are responsive enough. The controls are responsive. Ooh, can I make that? I can make that. That's a pretty wicked looking sword. Yes. I like getting new weapons. So, and we're going to get into this in a minute. The actual gameplay loop and all that. But here's some examples of what I was talking about with presentation. That's all he says. I mean, he couldn't read that a little bit. I don't mind reading the quest part, but, you know, come on, give me something here. I have a proposal too. Talk more. But either way, I digress. So performance-wise, I think the controls are responsive enough for what you're dealing with. I don't think it has to be pixel perfect here. Level 4. You know, yay, I guess. I'm going to definitely play this game more, I think. But either way, in the end, as far as performance goes, I gave Dauntless a 5 out of 5. I think for what it's doing, that's a wicked looking. Oh, I love this armor. I think that it is doing a great job as far as performance as of right now. And especially with an online game, a game that you have to play on the internet with other people when you're dealing with lag and all that stuff, I think it does a very good job. Both out on the hunt, when you're out in the world fighting monsters, and here in this section, the hub area. I think that the performance is fantastic. I'm going to have to give it a 5 out of 5. So far, this is looking pretty good for Dauntless. So now, let's move on to my third criteria that I judge a game by. And that criteria is engagement. And by engagement, I mean it in the sense of how wrapped up am I in playing the actual game? Like, how much am I interested in what's going on? How much am I wanting to go through and, you know, if it is a game that has a lot of, like, the same activities over and over again, are they entertaining? Are they
brings you to the
original enough that every time I come back, it's worth doing it again? Oh, looks like I can actually upgrade these. Let's, I have enough for that one. I may do that in a minute. Okay. Maybe the minute's up. Let's see. Let's do it. Yes. And you can see the increase in... I can upgrade the Nasher too on that as well. Okay. Good times. All right. So... engagement. So let's talk here. Again, a scale of 0 to 5. First off, the bad. This game is very grindy. You will do the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Part of it is because it's the gameplay. It's this game itself and its structure, and this is not the only game with that structure, and I will get to that when I get to my next category, because that's where I'm going to have a lot of stuff to say. But in this regard, I will say that as far as engagement, a negative on it is it feels pretty grindy. Now, there's a lot of stuff to help with that. There's different tonics you can use to change the experience. You can go solo or with players online. You upgrade your gear, and it allows you to take on tougher things. And it may have different effects on some of those other things if, you know, they have a weakness towards the element that it's attached to, all that. But in the end, you're doing the same thing over and over again. And it is not the only game like that. A great example would be Monster Hunter World. And Monster Hunter World is an amazing game. But, you know, the grind is part of it. I feel like its grind, it doesn't feel as grindy because it's a semi-open world you can walk from place to place to. You're not just dropped in an arena to fight something and with a little bit off to the side. You have entire vistas to explore, and you have to, like, hunt the thing down. It's not just a direct fight. So I would have to say, in that regard, that the grind is a problem for me. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a fun grind, but I think that it could become old, and definitely will. That being said, the gameplay loop, go do this action, in this case, kill behemoths, I think they're called in here, instead of monsters like in Monster Hunter. That part of it, go kill them, harvest their parts, upgrade your gear, go back and kill more. That, I think, it's a great gameplay loop. It's fun. So we're going into a new hunt, and this one I'm doing solo. I imagine this one will be a little more challenging because I'm going solo. Because before, most of the time, I was able to just kind of wail on it, and nobody really noticed. Like, the monster was too busy dealing with my friends to deal with me as much. But let's check it out.
Not a second to lose.
But I think this great gameplay loop works really, really well. Honestly, it's very much like Monster Hunter. It's also very much like Diablo,
Just because something is in your
the Diablo series, and Destiny. The problem, though, is, again, the grind. I would have to say, when it comes to this third category, engagement, I think the storytelling, there isn't a whole lot of it at the moment. That I do reserve the judgment to go back, or the right to go back and make a change to this. And I think there is more that I'm not really going to get to show you here. I mean, I have seen some things that do progress some stuff a little bit. So because of that, because of what I've seen that you're not going to get to see on camera, I'm going to give engagement a 4 out of 5. I think that it is engaging. The general gameplay is engaging. If you can get past the grindy part, it's definitely not this epic story, and I think that this is a score that might one day actually go down or up depending on what happens and what they do with the game. Really, any of these could, depending on updates and things like that, because it's kind of online all the time game. Updates are kind of a requirement. I don't know if dropping down from here is the greatest idea. I probably need to move around and find where to go. So so far we've looked at 3 categories. Presentation is a 4.5. Performance, a 5 out of 5. And engagement, a 4 out of 5. Now for my 4th category, and that is design. Is the game fun? Is the game like a unique experience? Does it bring something new to the table? Does it make something different? Even if it is similar to another game, does it make it its own? That sort of thing. So, in design, I have to be completely honest here. And I think this score might be a little generous right now. I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. A 2 out of 5. This is where I think Dauntless has a problem. And here's why. First off, this game is Monster Hunter. That's it. Monster Hunter World became really popular. It's actually the game that made the long-running Monster Hunter series become huge here in the West. It became huge in the U.S. specifically. The previous games were a little bit harder to fathom and get into. They simplified it just enough, but it's still pretty complex. This is basically a slightly more simplified Monster Hunter with cartoon graphics. And that's one issue. It is a Monster Hunter clone. Now, there's my prey. Oh, I like that he looks different. Check that out. Alright. Oh, crap. Oh, that was shocking. Okay. Let's see if we can get it. I'm going to work on this. Oh, whoa, where'd you go? Alright, come back. There's that tail. Oh, that was a miss. Okay, he's got that side thing. There we go. One thing I like about the longsword is that's different damage and stuff, and we'll talk about that in a second. My issue, and one of the concerns I have, is this is made by Epic Games. Now, I have been a fan of Epic Games for a long time. They made the game Unreal. They made the game with Unreal Tournament. They made the original 3 Gears of War games. Gears of War is one of my favorite franchises ever. That being said, I feel like Epic has gone down a different path. For the last little while, they haven't really done anything of their own. They've been copying a lot. And one great example, Fortnite. It starts off as, honestly, a clone of PUBG. Now, I will give them credit, and this is one area where if you are going to copy a game, at least you have to make it your own. And in that regard, they definitely did that. Fortnite is its own thing. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is much more hardcore. It's much more of a realistic shooting sim. It's more brutal, that sort of thing. Where on the other hand, Fortnite is more casual. It's honestly about as hardcore as Cookie Jam on the phone. But that being said, it works for it. They've made their own identity of something quirky and weird, and that's worked. The main issue with it is the game didn't start out as a battle royale and was never meant to be. It was meant to be something else, which in and of itself was a copy of two different things mashed together, but one of them was something they invented themselves, and the other one was something that they put their own spin on. So I think Fortnite has tried to do that. Oh, I just set him on fire. But they've tried to do that, but they have just not succeeded. I feel, but for Fortnite, they mostly have, at least until recently. But like this mechanic of being a cut off limbs, also Monster Hunter, totally a Monster Hunter thing. And that's not the end of the world. I get it. But you've got Epic Games has had some amazing ideas over the years. Start having your own ideas again. Like example with Fortnite. Now, they introduced a ping system right after, and actually a little bit after, like enough time to actually install one in Fortnite, because Apex Legends started taking their viewers and was a better game because of its ping system. They bring in something to revive a downed teammate, which again Apex Legends did and was a great part of the game that made it unique and something different, and they copied it too. I feel like, cut that limb, eh? I feel like that's my issue. They are basically copying stuff a lot. Like this mechanic here, you'll see damage numbers popping up. The white numbers are just general damage. The yellow numbers are damage where I'm actually damaging a specific limb to cut it off. And you can get better upgrade materials from doing that, which is really cool. Except that's exactly what Monster Hunter World does, and Monster Hunter in general does. So I feel like, they're copying too much stuff. I would like to see them go back to doing stuff like they did before, where it was their original idea. They created themselves. These are the people that brought us the Unreal Engine, one of the best gaming engines out there. Maybe not graphically per se, although sometimes it can just be a beast. But as far as performance, as far as apparently from what you hear from developers, ease of use, I would like to see them do something completely original instead of cashing in on stuff that other people have done, like this, like what they've done with the add-ons and stuff to Fortnite or Fortnite in general. That's where my complaint is. That being said, even the positive design elements are not their design elements. They came from other games, and that's where my problem is. So I give it a 2 out of 5 for design, and I feel that's a little generous. I was debating to lower than that quite a bit, but I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt to see what they could do. Because again, this is Monster Hunter World, but stripped down. Instead of 14 unique weapons to use, you have 5. Instead of the ridiculously large amount of monsters you have in the world of Monster Hunter World, you have a much smaller number. I think less than half here, and they don't interact in the world the way the ones in Monster Hunter World do. Like in that game, some of the when you're out in the open world, some of the monsters you can hunt are actually hunting other monsters you can hunt, and there's an actual ecosystem existing. Here, it's more of a little arena battle with a monster, and you know what? It's fun. No complaints. It is fun. It's just not theirs.
Won't slay themselves.
It's Capcom's. It's Monster Hunters. Sorry. So that gives us 4 categories: presentation of 4.5. Performance of 5.5, engagement a 4. I'm sorry, I misstated there. Presentation of 4.5, graphics a 5, engagement a 4, design a 2, the last one, cost. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. This is a free game. It doesn't cost anything. So, why would there even be a stat for cost? Well, it's pretty simple. Most free games, a lot of them I would say, are very much predatory when it comes to microtransactions. There have been some full $60 games that have been extremely predatory with microtransactions. I'm looking at you, Star Wars Battlefront 2. I'm looking at you, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I'm looking at you, well, most stuff, honestly. The only companies that get it remotely right are probably arguably Blizzard with Overwatch, because everything's cosmetic and they give you free crates just for, being around. You don't really feel the need to buy them because you get so many for free anyway, and it's just cosmetics and crap like that. That being said, in this game, the microtransactions that I've found do not seem like, they don't appear to be necessary. I don't feel like I have to do them to enjoy the game. I don't feel like I have to do them to advance in the game. I can advance on my own by going through the gameplay loop, and the gameplay loop, although repetitive, is pretty fun. Now, I could see it getting old, but then again, you know, we don't all play the same game 24/7. I could see playing it and then playing something else and then coming back to it, or making it my like a game I have one day a week I play, and then something that I'm trying to like solve and progress through a story I play the rest of the time, or competitive multiplayer on some game like Gears or Call of Duty or Halo or whatever, right? So
What news?
I'm gonna
from
go
the
around
frontier?
and see some of these merchants, see if I can. Hey, I can upgrade that. Oh no, I can make that. See, that's what I like. When you go on a hunt and stuff, you can create new stuff, just like Monster Hunter. Again, though, it's just like Monster Hunter. I mean, like, we've seen all this. So the microtransactions do not appear to be necessary, which is good. And I have greatly enjoyed playing this game. It has been fun, very fun. And I haven't paid a penny. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't really intend to. But as I play it, I may change my mind as a way of supporting the company and their great game. So, as an example, Hearthstone is, I think, a great example of this. Hearthstone, I have bought packs on my own instead of just earning them, because I feel like they made a great collectible card game online. I think that it is incredibly intuitive, incredibly well balanced. It's the closest thing we're going to ever get to Magic the Gathering without Magic the Gathering, and I think it does better than Magic the Gathering has yet to do on a digital card game. Magic is just so complex with so many options, where, you know, Hearthstone has kept it as simple as they need to make it work. So I think in that regard, we're seeing some definite, you know, improvement in those areas. I think here it's really enjoyable without paying anything. There are microtransactions, and that is an issue in general, and they do seem to have some gameplay benefits. Like those little, what do you call them? The things that I go here and open. Let's see. These. Slayer cores. Those can have positive gameplay benefits. That's where my concern is. Now, I am earning them, and I'm earning them without paying anything. But my issue would be that, you know, it shouldn't have an effect on gameplay, period. It should just be, you know, because I look pretty or whatever. That should be what it's about, is look, not gameplay effect. So in that regard, I'm going to give Dauntless a 4 out of 5 for cost. So I'm jumping all over the place here with my footage. I'm just trying to put some clips together. So we're going to open some more cores here so you can see what do we have inside. Just as an example, +1 tough cell and +1 evasion cell. They're defensive and movement. Okay, so, and that's kind of what you get from these. You get these cells that you can use to upgrade your weapons and armor and to upgrade your character's abilities. I think it's great. My issue is, as a microtransaction mechanic, it is giving gameplay benefits to something that does not need gameplay benefits.
Time you got back out there.
So again, let's just to recap before I sum up and give it a final score. Presentation, 4.5. Its artistic expression style of art fits pretty well. I think that visually I have little to no complaints. Audio-wise, the lack of NPC dialogue is like really annoying. It's glaring, and I realize as a free-to-play game, you don't have the money to go pay like big-name voice actors or anything, but you can get somebody to do a little line here and there, even if it's a member of the studio. There's people there that can do that, right? I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? But I would like to see a little more speech, a little more, and that's the biggest issue. And some of the sounds don't sound very good, like the sword doesn't sound like a sword, that sort of thing. Performance, I give it a 5 out of 5. I think it runs really, really well, even in a crowded lobby, even in a crowded hunt. It does keep you separate from a massive world. You're only dealing with the few people in your instance, and that's part of it, but it works. and I think they did a great job here. So I definitely give performance a 5 out of 5. Engagement, although grindy, the grain pay loop is fun, and I definitely think it earns a 4 out of 5 there under engagement. Design, sorry, but you get a 2. And you get a 2 because of microtransaction and time-gated activities, and that's something I didn't mention earlier. I attempt to combine a couple cells to make a better cell, which is a really cool mechanic, but it takes a really long time for that to unlock, and that's a classic example of I'm just doing this to make you sit on here and play more, to make sure you log in the next day. That's manipulative. That's something that a lot of free-to-play games do. I'm not saying they're the only ones. Don't get me started on Elder Scrolls Blades, but I feel like that's what they're doing basically. They're doing the Elder Scrolls Blades thing, and that's why I think as far as that part of it goes, overall though, design, I feel it earns a 2 because of its honestly blatant copying, and I don't think they've really made this their own yet. Like with Fortnite, at least they changed the tone, and at least before they started ripping off Apex Legends, it at least earned its own quirky, goofy personality. But then when you start copying Apex Legends 2, now we know you're not coming up with your own ideas. You're just taking theirs. Because you can't, apparently those things can't be copywritten. And I know that there have been several lawsuits towards Epic Games. This thing is a running problem. So, but design, I give it a 2. And cost, this is my only issue. These cores and the combination of cores and stuff like that, I give it a 4 for that. So, 4.5, 5, 4, 2, and 4. Those were my scores. So as we watch this gameplay here, how do I break this down? Well, the first thing I do is I add all the numbers together. And so once I add those 5 numbers together, that should give me a number between 0 and 25. Obviously, you don't want a 0 in any category. Yeah, I would argue you don't want anything below a 3 in any category. And in this regard, this game had one category I gave a 2 to. And again, I feel like I could have lowered that. I think I could have made it a 1.5 and it would have been still fair. But I went with a 2 because I'm hoping that they will in time make it their own, and I'm going to keep a watch on that and probably play it some more because the fun is totally there. It is very fun. No doubt about it. And I like this whole min-maxing as far as like using these cells on your gear. I don't know how much of a perk it's going to give you, but the fact that you can pay for them is the problem. But the mechanic is cool. No doubt about that. So once I add these up, it'll give you a score between 0 and 25. Then basically you just multiply by 4. And that gives you a score from 0 to 100. And so now my actual profession is a school teacher. I teach high school literature. So even though I complained about having to read all the dialogue on screen, I'm not against reading. I actually think that's great. But in a video game, you need to give them something besides just a screen full of text. Because, nobody's played Zork since 1984 or something. I mean, it's just not an issue anymore. So, and most of you probably don't even know that reference. So looking at our scores here, and let's talk about the final number I give to Dauntless. So for presentation, they have earned a 4.5. For performance, they have totally earned their perfect 5. For engagement, definitely a 4. And I hope that continues. Design, I'm sorry, but it's a 2. And cost is a 4, which brings the grand total score for this game to a 78. And it'll pop up here in just a second. A 78. So I tried to do this in the form of a grading rubric, sort of, and 70 is passing. Right, and especially if you are a fan of that sort of thing, 70 is usually plenty. Some games can get a 65 or a 60, and because you like the subject matter, it's worth it. But this, I think, as of now, and until I come back and revisit it, I'm giving it a 78. I think it is a great game. I think it is totally worth your time, which thankfully is the only thing you really have to spend is time. I would steer clear of microtransactions, what little they have, but the ones they have I think are questionable, but not required. So that 78 I think is totally earned, right on the cusp of a B, but not quite there. This would be a C, and I think that's where we are. And I would not be surprised if this edged itself into the B category soon. So I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you would please like and subscribe. And I hope to see you next time on my next episode of Free For All or some of my other shows. Let's Play Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Let's Play World War Z. Beta test, that sort of thing. So thank you so much, and I will see you